Before you do this week's article of the week, I would like to talk about what annotating should look like. Okay. We have been doing this for several weeks now, and a lot of you are really doing a really awesome job. Okay. But some of you, I think, still haven't quite caught on to what it is I'm asking you to do. So let's take a look, first of all, at why we annotate. Like, why do we do this in the first place? So if you recall, one, we want to think critically about what we are reading. So I put the little asterisks there behind critically so that you know to look at the asterisks at the bottom so that you know what that means if that's confusing to you, okay? So at the bottom it tells us critical thinking is a process of observing the world, applying what you already know to your observations, and then making judgments about what you have observed. In other words, critical thinking is how you learn from experiencing and interpreting the world around you. So when you think critically, you make observations, you connect those observations to what you already know, and then you make judgments about what you've observed. Okay, you evaluate them. Are they good or are they bad? You analyze them. Are they, how do they work? How do they work together? How do they fit into your life? How do they connect with the world? We want to make sure that when we are writing these annotations, we're thinking critically, because that's one major purpose of writing the annotations, is so that we think and exercise our brains. The second is to make connections between the text and our own lives. Okay, how can we relate to the text? And the third is to question and wonder about what we read so that we can learn more from it. So that's why we annotate. We've been over this before, but I thought it bared repeating since it's been a while, been a few weeks since we talked about it. All right, so let's take a look at first some common practices that are not working as they should be. Okay, these are examples to show you, people who still haven't quite caught on 100% to what I'm asking them to do. So I am crossing out everybody's names. You can't see who did anything, who wrote anything, or whatever. Okay, so but these particular students need a little help. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at what they've done, and then we're going to look at what other students are doing and see how we can get those of you who are still a little confused, how can we get you moving along so that you totally understand what you're being asked to do every week. All right? So this is from the article of the week about Samhain and Halloween and how that ancient Celtic ritual and holiday became what we know as Halloween today. So this is our first example of really what we don't want to be doing, okay? What this student has done is they have just dialed it in. They just dialed it in. Basically, they did it just to get it done. They don't really show any critical thinking at all. So they have highlighted a couple of things. They're not even complete sentences, okay, like full real ones. And then over here, their annotation is, it's just a prank, bro. I don't understand what they're trying to say, okay? So they need to highlight like an entire sentence or like a couple of sentences so it's clear exactly the context of what they're referring to. Same here, they highlighted hollowed out turnips, potatoes, and beets. And then over here, the annotation is, man, Halloween was strange back in the day. And here they highlighted Stingy Jack, and their annotation is, never heard of him. So again, what I've written here is that these annotations just dial it in and write something, anything, for the sake of writing something. They don't show any critical thought about the article. They don't show that they're wondering something, or that they're making connections to their own lives, or that they disagree with the information, or that they agree with the information, okay? The purpose of annotating, you guys, is so that you can better understand the text by thinking about it and writing down what you're thinking. This particular example does not achieve that purpose. All right? So this is our first example of something that is not really what we want to be doing, and certainly not what I'm looking for when I am scoring you. This next example is pretty much the same passage. As you can see, when this particular student highlighted, they did totally the opposite of what the first student did. They highlighted everything. Everything. So if you have excessive highlighting, okay, one, do we really need to highlight the entire article? Okay, we're only supposed to be highlighting things that strike us as being surprising, confirm, challenge, or change our beliefs, or something that we wonder about. And so this is all highlighted, the whole thing. So I don't know which parts this particular student is trying to respond to. Because if we highlight everything and we say everything is important, then really what we're saying is nothing is important. Because there's no distinction between what's important and what's not, all right? So whereas the previous example hardly highlights anything at all and hardly says anything at all, this one highlights everything, which is kind of the same effect, okay? Only highlight the specific things that you want to respond to. So if we look at the annotation here, and I think since this is highlighted twice, this person is responding to this sentence or these two sentences. The dead came in search of food and comfort, but evil spirits, fairies, gods, and witches also came in search of mischief. Witches didn't just fly on their broomsticks. Some prowled on the backs of enormous cats, one story says. So they have that in yellow, and they say it surprises them. Okay, so the question would be, why does this surprise you? So they should be saying, this surprises me because, and that's what this student does, but his because is this. The dead came in search of food and comfort, but evil spirits, fairies, gods, and witches also came in search of mischief. Witches didn't just fly on their broomsticks. Some prowled on the backs of enormous cats, one story says. So instead of explaining why he is surprised about this information, he's just literally copied and pasted this information into an annotation, wrote the exact same thing that was already in the text. Okay, so I want to be clear that that is not what I'm asking you to do either. I'm not asking you to rewrite what's in the text. I am asking you to write what you think about the text. So if this is surprising, I want to know why you find it surprising. Why does it surprise you that they believed that the dead came back in search of food and spirits? Why did they believe, why does it surprise you that they didn't think that witches only rode on broomsticks? Why does it surprise you that they thought that witches could also ride on cats? Okay, answer the question. Don't just repeat what's already there. All right? So these are the two major things I see happening that are what we want to get away from. So let's look at some best practices now, okay? Some best practices. That means this is the optimal thing to do. This is really what we want your goal to be. Some best practices that show the student is connecting the text to real life and thinking critically. That's what these examples do. I have several, and they're all from the same article. They're all from the Halloween article about how the Celtic celebration of Samhain eventually became what we know to be Halloween. So this student did do a lot of highlighting, okay, but they didn't highlight the whole thing green, okay? They've actually highlighted it by paragraph instead of by sentence. What I want to point out are some of the annotations here. So this yellow one is in response here to, or is it Samhain? I always thought it was Samhain. Maybe it's Samhain. Whatever. I don't know. It's Celtic. It's Samhain. My daughter says it's Samhain. Thank you, Talia. So Samhain is the Celtic New Year's Eve, which marks the end of the harvest. At that time, the veil between the spirit world and the world of the body was loosened, allowing the dead to mingle with the living. Okay, so this is what the Celts believed, is that the spirit world, the veil or the border between our world and the spirit world has become so thin that the dead can come back. We can cross. All right. So she says she's surprised by this. And she says, wow, this is surprising that they look at it in this way. I'm not positive, but I think Hispanic families celebrate something similar to this, if not the same. I watched a movie by the name of Coco, and they celebrated a holiday when families would visit graveyards with their loved ones, and they would put items around it. The dead would linger from the dead world to the world of the living, basically. This is an excellent connection. Because she said, hey, this surprises me. What surprises me is how similar this is to something that happens years and years and years later in a completely different culture, and how they're basically the same thing. That is so interesting. Okay? So she expresses surprise, but then she connects it to something very, very specific that she already knows about from beyond the text and tells us exactly why it surprises her. So that's why this is a really excellent annotation, because she's showing critical thinking. She's not just saying, wow. She's not just saying, that surprises me. Okay? She's explaining specifically why. So that was an excellent annotation. So if that's your annotation, 2 thumbs up to you. So a couple others here. I want to point out this one down here. I liked this one because it's short. It shows that sometimes they can be short, but pack a lot of punch, even though they're not very long. Not every annotation has to be super duper long. So she highlighted where it says in AD 835, the Roman Catholic Church wanted to take over the Samhain rituals, which it saw as pagan. In other words, non-Christian and unholy. So the church turned November 1 into its own holiday to honor saints called All Saints' Day. Later on, the church would add a second holiday, All Souls' Day, on November 2 to honor the dead. So this is a very short but very worthy question, because this student says, so was this holiday an offense to Christianity? She's showing that she sees how the two might conflict. Somehow Christianity is conflicting here with the ancient Celtic religions. And she sees that there's definitely something going on here. All right? And she's 100% right in that there was a conflict here, because the Christians wanted the pagans to convert to Christianity. So they started overlapping their traditions with the pagan traditions. Okay? And that's why we see these similarities. It's because religions are trying to convert people who aren't part of their religion, and it gets all kind of tangled up. And then eventually it's a mixture of different things from different cultures. So short but sweet, great question. Okay, so this student, this is a question because it's in pink. They have highlighted, there is no historical evidence about what actually went on during early celebrations. So this is the paragraph about how we don't have like specific information. We just kind of have to guess from the clues that we find from ancient Celts. So the student asks, it really makes me wonder why we don't have any evidence about what would happen during these holidays. Like, were they wiped out? Were they purposely hidden? Okay, so they're like, the student's like, why would we not have that information? And they're further wondering, is there some ulterior motive? Like, did somebody hide the evidence because they don't want us to know? Did the evidence did it just disappear because it wasn't preserved appropriately and it just accidentally isn't there anymore? Why isn't there a record? It kind of assumes that there could potentially be foul play, which is interesting too. So this is a question, it's a specific question, and it's worthy of finding answers. Like, this student could use this question to go do further research and find out more about the Celts and their holidays. Okay, so when you're writing questions, we had talked about thin questions and thick questions. This is a thick question. It cannot be answered with yes or no. It cannot be answered with a simple Google search. It cannot, you're going to find different answers potentially to these questions. So these are thick questions, and they're specific thick questions. So I liked this annotation. And it could lead to further research, which is also awesome. All right. This student highlighted the holiday can trace its roots to an ancient Celtic tradition in Ireland. This surprises me that Halloween is traced to ancient Celtic traditions in Ireland. Okay. They've kind of repeated it, but they go on to say their own thing. I didn't think that Halloween was that deep or ingrained in the culture as it thought. I thought it was a day where you dress up and get free candy. Okay, so this person, they're like, okay, this surprises me. And it surprises me because I never thought about it as being anything other than what it is today. I had no idea that it came from somewhere else. And it's that old. Okay? And then for wonder or question, they wrote, the Celts were an ancient group of people who lived more than 2,000 years ago. I would have finished and said, in what's now Ireland, Wales, blah, blah, blah. So they wondered. They said, this makes me wonder, how could a 2,000-year-old holiday make its way into our modern day? How could a 2,000-year-old tradition survive many changes, and how it went through many other dark times? Another thing is how companies found a way to exploit and got a hold of Halloween. This down here is why I chose this one. Not only do they give a really detailed explanation of what they are wondering here, but this student also implies that he sees somebody trying to make money off of this ancient ritual, because he uses the word exploit. Okay? Exploit is to take advantage of. So this student sees our current Halloween as a way for companies to use this old ancient religious tradition in order to sell candy and make money, or sell costumes and make money. That is a really, really interesting observation. So that is part of the reason why I just really, really liked this particular annotation. This one, short and sweet. Rather, they were also said to welcome the spirits that could travel the earth during this time. So, okay, bonfires. I would have also highlighted the sentence right before it, so it made more sense. But they're talking about bonfires and how they're said to welcome spirits to the earth. So this student writes, so they welcome friendly spirits to the earth. Friendly spirits in quotation marks. I am surprised because they didn't think that these spirits could be lying and wanting to hurt them or misguide them. I mean, look at Lucy or Lucifer. So this student is surprised that people would see spirits as being friendly and good. Because a lot of times when we think of ghosts or, spirits from beyond, from the great beyond, we tend to think of them as being evil or scary or something we should run and hide from. Like Halloween is supposed to be a scary holiday. So she says, okay, I'm surprised. And I'm surprised because this shows something different from how I usually see the world. Okay, that these people saw spirits not as being evil or scary, but they saw them as being something friendly that we should welcome. And that surprises me. So I liked that one too. This should be this is the last one. Samhain, the Lord of the Dead, or winter. I would have highlighted the whole sentence. The holiday honors its namesake, Samhain, the Lord of the Dead, or winter. Okay, so winter basically comes because of this particular god. Every winter, he became locked in a 6-month struggle with Baal, the sun god. Every spring, Baal would win, marking a return to lightness, celebrated by Beltane or May Day. And I probably said Beltane wrong too. Beltane. See, I told you that my daughter over there was going to correct me. Beltane. All right, so I love this connection here. This student wrote, this can also relate to Aphrodite losing her daughter every winter, and she is sad, so that's how the seasons change. Summer and spring she is with her daughter, and it takes the sun god. Oh, and the sun god Baal takes over the light and fall and winter. She doesn't have her daughter, and the darkness of Samhain takes over. So that's a little convoluted there, but basically talking about Demeter would be her mother, I believe. Okay. So this student is taking what he already knows. This confirms something he already knows. He knows that this is a same story in a different culture. Okay? That the Greek mythology and the Roman mythology and the Celtic mythology, that they all seem to have a myth about why everything gets cold and dead in the winter. So he's making those connections and showing here, okay, he better understands this new information because he can connect it to something he already knows. So when we talk about better understanding what we read, that's one of the ways we do it. We connect it to something we already know. So this was a great observation. And it also raises the question of how come these completely different cultures that did not come into contact with one another very easily, because remember, this is thousands of years ago. They don't have internet. You have to like walk for years to get from one end of a continent to another, okay? How and why did they have these same stories even though they didn't live anywhere near each other and didn't communicate with each other? That would be a great research question too. Okay, so hopefully this helps you to see more what I'm looking for. Like I said, these weren't all perfect examples of things, but they all had something going on that I thought it would be useful for you to see. And hopefully that will help you to better annotate your own work, and we'll go from there, okay? So when you do your article of the week, please remember, you not only have to read the article and annotate it, you have to do the quiz questions, which are that's the least important part, okay? Answer the quiz questions, and then write your response using the RACES strategy. You have to do the writing prompt. Some of you are reading the article and answering the quiz questions and quitting, and then you're getting hardly any points because the quiz doesn't really count for a whole lot. I am most concerned with the annotations and your writing prompt. So please let me know if you have any questions, and have a great week.